Grand Rising beloveds. My name is Sheena with the Way of Namaste, and I am so excited to be gathering with my sister Jamie Day again this morning for part three of a series that we started a few weeks back around learning how to be supported through our empathy. So, looking at some of the differences between empathy and compassionately witnessing, and looking at some of the nuance between some of these things and how they might show up for us, and just learning these tools of self regulation so that we can be modeling them for others. So, we've begun this conversation before. So, what we started with was really introducing and defining the difference between empathy and compassion. So, for anybody that's joining us that hasn't checked out those videos, we do have them live on YouTube. So, you can go back and you can watch part one. We also went part two, just digging a little bit deeper into the feelings and the shifts on how empathy can sometimes even be boring when we're so used to be chasing those chemical releases of the fix, the chemical high of empathically taking on the experiences of those around us. And today we are bringing in another layer around this to be looking at these empathy vortexes that we can be creating and that we can be surrounded by. So that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. But before we go into that, Jamie, how are you? How are you doing? What's alive for you in this moment?
Oh, thanks, babe. There's so much alive for me in this moment. And I'm so glad you talked about our first two videos, identifying empathy and compassion, how they're showing up for us in our relationships, and then how compassion can be downright boring when we're so used to the empathic roller coaster. So go and check those videos out if that resonates with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the empathic sponge, the empathic vortex, and identifying, are we the empathic vortex? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, yeah. And what happens if we are? Guess what? Even more self-love gets to be applied around your own being. Because we're going to talk about how we come by this stuff honestly. It happens. It happens to us through the course of our maturation and our development. And we also get to talk about sovereign awareness, where we just get to make a different choice from this moment forward without self-blame or self-criticism or self-punishment. So today seems like a really fabulous day. It's a magical Monday, an hour now moment. I would just invite everyone to take a breath and just ask yourself, how am I doing? How am I doing right now? Pay attention to how your body feels. Where are you holding either tightness, or are you hard? Are you really protecting yourself with a lot of just armor, body armor with hardness in the body? Do you feel maybe heat? Do you feel maybe a sensation of being cool, pain? Like, what are you noticing? Discomfort, expansion? And then take a moment and really discover how you're feeling emotionally. What's your emotional state right now? What's your mental state? How are those thoughts coming in? Are they pinging all over the place, pulling you in 9 million different directions? Or do you feel really centered, as if you are the convergence point for all of those lines of thoughts coming in, and you're just holding them peacefully with ease, and then discerning which ones get your attention? How are you doing spiritually? How is your connection to your higher self? How are you feeling with that soul infused energy? Hmm. And then just sort of send out a tendril. How are you relating through this web of oneness to unity consciousness? Because as Sheena so wisely says, there's only one of us here. So we're all in this together. So no matter what comes up today, you know you're not alone. And we're going to process all of this through this sanctuary, through this temple space as one. And sometimes that can be a really great way to just discover where am I at? Because if we're consistently in this empathic vortex, we're not taking the time to discover this for ourselves. We're looking to have this validated by others and then gifted to us. We're sitting here waiting around as if we are helpless, waiting for others to help us discover how we're doing, right? So we can start to figure out where these lines get blurry, where they're very defined, and then where we choose to resonate, where we choose to work from, to respond from.
Mm.
So yeah, that's just what's coming up for me to just share.
I
Where
love
where
that.
do you want to dive in right now?
Yeah, let's dive in with our attunement because I think that's the best practice of this series and of just this moment of recognizing that we don't need to be validated by others on how we are. We can actually take the moment to check in with ourselves and practice that pause of asking ourselves, how are we feeling and how do we connect to body, mind, and spirit? So if that feels in alignment, let's go ahead and start there.
Absolutely. Um, Something just came to the forefront of the soup of my consciousness while you were talking. Oh, this is what it was. So I was just empathic and compassionate with myself, right? In that moment, giving words to what was authentically happening with me. I had a thought and I lost it and then brought it back. So this is what I was thinking of that I wanted to share before we align, attune, and allow is that being empathic with ourselves is always going to happen because we can't not be empathic with ourselves, no matter how much we distract or deny or try to pretend that we are disconnected. We are empathically connected and resonating with ourselves all the time because we're living this life as us, right? And then we get to be compassionate with ourselves around that. We're just understanding what's going on with us. We are our own empathic and compassionate witness, as it were. When it comes to being empathic with others, that's what Sheena and I've been talking about. That's what exhausts us, depletes us. It denigrates our sovereignty and it enables others through the message that, oh, well, I don't think you have what it takes to go through what you're going through and to come up with your own solution. So I'm going to step in and do it for you. I'm going to come in and carry this emotional load for you because I don't really believe that you can do it yourself. So that's how empathy can be really destructive in many different ways in our relationships. However, compassion with others is always loving. It's unconditionally loving, really, because empathy breeds conditions and expectations. Compassion is unconditionally loving and says, hey, I'm right here with you. I see you. I honor you. And I am going to witness you because I believe in you so much. I know you've got what it takes to figure this out.
What
Big
a
difference.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, today, as we chat, we're going to talk about our childhood. So, a lot of this works for the paradigm of what's called adult relational currency, right? What we're talking about is very adult relational currency. I'm going to be compassionate with you. I'm not going to be empathic with you. However, parent-child currency is a little bit different. So we're going to be stepping into what that was maybe like for us as we were the child in that parent-child currency dynamic and how that could have bred this empathic sort of vortex that we are now embodying through our adult to adult relationships. Okay, so just kind of put that in. I said the soup of my consciousness, put that in the soup pot right now and just let it simmer and let it cook. And we're going to align and attune and allow. So remember, we're working with the imagination of the soul. So, through the imagination of the soul, the rules are there are no rules. The truth is that nothing is true and everything is true. And wherever that imagination of the soul takes you, gifting you colors, resonance, memories, thoughts, feelings, taking you into the multidimensional landscape, you get to determine your relationship with all of these things without question and without self-recrimination, meaning you have that kind of punitive inner voice saying, well, that's not true. Who do you think you are? Like that stuff, we just kind of lovingly let it go when we're in this space. So connect into your heart. Now, if you're familiar with the chakras, our energy body on the body, we know the heart is right here between the breast organs. The color that's associated with the heart chakra is green. I like to say emerald because I like to bring in not only the ray of the color, but the activation of the gemstone consciousness as well. So think into that emerald ray coming right into the back of your heart chakra, juicing that temple space of your heart chakra, coming out the front of your body. Now, this emerald ray is unconditional love. So breathe into that and just pay attention and really give space to receive as much as you are giving. Okay. Now we're going to connect heart to heart. So use that imagination of your soul, transport yourself to a temple space, see all of us there with you. And if your brain organ is saying, wait, I don't know who all is in this temple space, that's okay. Your higher self does. So just trust and get your spiritual paintbrush, dip it in some glittery emerald paint, and paint that emerald ray of light from your heart chakra around this temple space to each heart chakra of every aligned being joining us here. And then begin and end with yourself, creating a living sphere of unconditional love. Okay, on your next exhale, allow this emerald light to rise and it's going to connect to the amethyst indigo rays coming into the ajna. This is your chakra that's the externalization of your third eye. So feel this amethyst indigo ray coming into the ajna, juicing the brain organ, both the left and the right hemispheres. It's going to find its little pivot pocket right underneath the pineal gland before it pivots and then exits behind the crown. So if it goes in here, the light exits here, giving and receiving. Now, we're going to bring that emerald ray up and the amethyst indigo ray down so that these rays are blending and dancing together. Because the amethyst indigo rays connect us to unconditional wisdom. So breathe into that. And on your exhale, grab that spiritual paintbrush and now dip it into some beautiful glittery amethyst indigo paint and paint a line of light connecting your ajna chakra to the ajna chakra of every other aligned being in our temple space, beginning and ending with you. Boop. Creating a living consciousness of unconditional wisdom. Well done. Now we bring these rays of light up through the activated crown chakra, all the way up to the higher self soul light, which is a white ray of light. And here, just for a moment, feel that higher self soul light energy coming around you, embracing you, nourishing you, giving you peace and ease, love, acceptance, understanding, empowerment, clarity, all of those things and more. And really see these rays of light through the spectrum of their colorful embodiment. See them dancing together. And when you're ready, take your spiritual paintbrush and dip it in some white glittery paint, and you are going to paint a line of light from your higher self to the higher self soul light of every aligned being in our temple, beginning and ending with you. Creating a living consciousness of soul infused energy. Well done. Okay, check back in with yourself. You are going to be in alignment through this empathic relationship with yourself, through this compassionate relationship with yourself. So if compassion brings the awareness up, no, I'm sorry, let me say that again. If empathy brings the awareness up, compassion holds that awareness without judgment. So ask, how am I feeling? How am I doing? How's my body? How's my heart? How's my mind? How is my soul? Yeah, and just breathe. Maybe it feels good to let it out. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to step in. We've connected body, mind, and spirit. We've aligned and attuned this physical body to resonate with the energy body. What we're going to do now is we're going to allow that pure energy from source and center to come into us. So get ready, and I want you to visualize through that imagination of the soul stepping into a golden current of bright light. This is our vertical pillar of light, and we are going to travel simultaneously up and down, creating, right, that energetic architecture of as above, so below. And we're going to go up, 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 and down, 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 ascending and descending in equal measure, all the way up to source. Whatever that is for you at this moment, at this time, and all the way down to center. Whatever that is for you at this moment, at this time. Feel this deep connection. Maintain this connection while also directing this energy simultaneously back up and back down into your physical body to meet itself at the heart. Feel into that connection. And now we say our prayers, setting our intentions. And it might feel good to say this aloud with me, or you might want to say it from the voice within your heart. I call forth the greatest and highest good for myself, for others, and for every living thing throughout all time and all space. I call forth the greatest and highest choice for myself, for others, and for every living thing throughout all time and all space. Really see those prayers going out. See them reaching, touching, nourishing, comforting every living thing throughout all time and all space. And when you're ready, bring yourself back into your now moment. Just gently re-entering. And here's what you can do. Meet your own needs. If you're thirsty, get something to drink. If you're hungry, get something to eat. If your body wants to move, get up and move. If you've got something you want to do, put us on pause and go do what you genuinely need to do to meet your own needs. Okay. Thank you so much, Sheena.
Thank you, Jamie. Oh, feels so good to just drop into that space. Thank you for creating that vortex for us.
You are so welcome.
So I love what you said earlier around this parent-child currency, as I think that's a great starting point to look at where we may have not learned this practice of self-regulation, in that we are looking to be informed by the environment. And so I definitely want to bring into our conversation the difference between sharing vulnerably from the experience that we're having and then pulling others into our emotional whirlpool. And, I think that in my experience, I don't think that I was like in my experience growing up, I don't think that I was taught and practiced much on how to share joy and to share bliss. But I was very practiced on how to share chaos and conflict, and how And so there was like this currency, this currency growing up on my safety is dependent on the safety of my environment. And if I feel a lot of hysteria in the environment, my first go-to is to think I'm not safe here. And nobody here seems to know what's going on. So how do I begin to take on some of the suffering of others so that I can start to diffuse the chaotic energy in the field or that frenetic energy around? And I think that some of us feel that in order to be vulnerable and to connect, we need to connect around our suffering and we need to connect around our emotional windfalls, our emotional chaos. So, can we speak a little bit around this idea of the parent child currency a bit more?
Absolutely. I love what you've just shared. The vibration or the energetic of commiseration is so culturally, societally, and really a lot of our families, it's supported in those relational dynamics, in those groupings. However, to come together to commune around what's going right, a lot of us have had that sort of beaten out of us.
Mhm.
I can remember my sweet grandma, and this was her way of wanting to protect me, but always giving sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle messages of, you don't want to brag. You don't want to be a braggart. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. That kind of perspective. And I know that came from her own wounding because she was such a natural beauty. I mean, and oftentimes beauty is attacked. And so I think that's what she was trying to protect me from getting any sort of mislabeled sort of reputation of being someone who's full of themselves, because she was really hoping to protect me, to keep myself small so that I'm not noticeable. And a lot of times the commiseration does that, is it keeps us small. And as long as we are empathically trauma bonding with others, we really don't blip on anybody else's radar because everybody else kind of looks at us as, either doing as bad or worse than they are. We become like their sort of litmus test to judge how good they're doing because they're like, oh, well, Jamie's got this going on, so at least I'm okay. That sort of thing. Um, so that's just something to think about right there. If like you grew up in that kind of environment and you're perpetuating those types of environments in your adult relationships, that can be a little pink flag for you to look at and think, okay, that's information that I can take and I can sort of make sense of and really determine, do I want these relationships to kind of up level and how that can happen, or do these relationships need to transform in some way? And sometimes that transformation might be an ending.
Mhm.
So a new beginning can begin. And I love what you said too about the chaos of the environment. So let's go into this dynamic of the parent-child currency versus adult relational currency. So when we are born, our needs are so great, right? And it's not just the physical needs of diapering and feeding and burping, but our needs for comfort and understanding and emotional connection are so great. And you've got to remember, we are souls having a human experience. So even as very, very tiny infants, even in utero, we were able to understand energy, and energy does not lie. So if we had adults around us, or we were being held within an adult that did not want us around, or felt overwhelmed by us, or felt psychically inferior to us, we can start to have this message that our needs are not going to be met. And then it can create this low level fear, right? And so that can create a dynamic where we are born and we exist our first few years of life and neural development, that this world isn't safe. I'm not safe in it. That quickly goes into my needs are not important. Then that translates into a way to self-blame to try to manage it. I'm not good at communicating my needs. Ergo, it's my fault that my needs aren't being met. So that can create a very specific way that we start to relate to the world. So we are born as this empathic sponge.
Mhm.
We are born with such great needs because we're infants. And the way that our species has been biologically created is that we need a caregiver. We
Mhm.
need a caregiver to survive. Now, if our basic needs are met and we do survive, we live, there are a lot of other needs that get to be met. And that's where parent-child relational currency comes in.
Mhm.
It's okay for the child to have a need and to not be able to verbally communicate it or energetically communicate it. And it's still okay to expect, and I'm using that word lightly, that the adult in this dynamic will be able to preemptively know that need is there and meet it without the child communicating it.
Mhm.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. And
Yeah.
that's one of the superpowers of being parents.
Yes, it really is. It's the gift economy of being parents. There's no exchange here. It's the gift of the parent meeting the child's needs, and the gift that the parent receives is seeing your child grow up healthy, happy, functional, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this stuff starts to shift a little bit and as we grow up, we start to learn, when raised in an optimal environment, that we indeed can communicate our needs effectively. And we can stay in this space of really understanding what about this world comes forward to meet our needs and what doesn't. And then we get to make our decisions accordingly of which of those relationships get to stay in our orbit, right? That's very sovereign. However, oftentimes we don't develop optimally. So, when we're really resonating with an aligned adult relational currency vibration, we're in this space of believing that the world is an okay enough place, safe enough place, believing in ourselves that we can communicate our needs, believing that we're worthy of having our needs met. And so we're constantly authentic in our expression and communication of our needs. It doesn't go silent, it doesn't go unconscious, it doesn't go into this sort of passive aggressive sort of layer of communicating. We're constantly saying, these are my needs. We're not demanding that they're being met, but we're saying, hey, these are my needs. I'm letting you know what my needs are. You can say, yes, you'll meet them. You can say, no, they won't. But both beget a subsequent conversation. And then after that, we get to decide, does the relationship stay? Does it grow? Does it go?
Mhm.
That's, adult relational currency. How often, though, are we existing in this pure paradigm of adult relational currency? Very seldom.
Yeah.
Right? Because think our relationships are our greatest teachers, especially our
Mhm.
primary ones. So things are going to get wonky. There's going to be like wobbles in the field for that.
Mhm.
As my friend Felipa likes to say, wobbles in the field.
Mhm.
So let's go back just a little bit. Parent-child currency. We're in a dynamic, we're growing up, our needs are being met. So we're believing this world is a safe place. We're also starting to believe by repetition that, oh, I can communicate my needs, and my caregiver, my primary caregiver, my parents, or whoever is fulfilling that role, meets them for me. So then that creates that currency of relating and communicating our needs. However, for a lot of us, just like you identified growing up in the chaos, you started to create a belief system that this world isn't safe. However, if I can take on the currency of others' emotional resonance and make it my own, then at least I have some potential of mastering this. And if I don't master it, then I get to blame myself. I get to punish myself. And I know that's going to be effective because I've gotten really good at it,
Mhm.
right? Because how are you going to punish everybody else? Like we do it in certain ways, but really we know that we're most effective in punishing ourselves.
Mhm.
So when that dynamic perpetuates and we're consistently taking on others' stuff, and we're also in this very interesting space of always kind of jockeying, is this safe? Am I capable of communicating my needs? Am I worthy of having my needs met? We can create a dynamic where we are this empathic sponge because we've not been given the proper path to learn sovereignty, to learn to believe in ourselves, to learn in self-confidence, to learn, like you said, self-resourcing, self-regulation, self-soothing. We never had a chance to learn that. So if we
Mhm.
haven't learned it, we can't blame ourselves for not knowing it.
Mhm.
But what we can do now, if some of this is resonating, what
Mhm.
we can do now is we can start to meet our own needs. And like Sheena and I have said before, you are so worth resourcing some support right now. So if this is something that's pinging in your consciousness, like, oh yeah, I can kind of see that was my experience when I was much younger. Find a qualified practitioner, healer, therapist. Have somebody help you kind of pull this apart and puzzle it out so that you can start to make sense of the why of why you're doing things. Then you can make new decisions as to how you want to react and relate going forward. Does
Mm.
that kind of help understand the difference in the dynamic between parent-child currency and adult-to-adult currency?
So much so, and with so much compassion that you can really see when you have struggled in this way. If you haven't learned this, then you do have to find a teacher, a guide, somebody that can help you show these ways to you. Because chances are, if you didn't learn them when you were a child, your parents can continue to have the same habits growing up. So you might become more aware as you get older, and in that awareness, now you can have a little bit more compassion to, okay, I see the habit, I see the behavior now. And now I have the self empowerment to change the behavior and how I respond to the same patterns that I'm seeing. And that's, I think, kind of like how we break the cycle of being that empathic vortex is, okay, I see where it's happening around me, but now I'm actually going to step out of the line. Now I'm actually going to step into the place of self regulating instead of feeling like you have to continue to diffuse the situation around you. you know um, Many of us that are in therapy and that are doing this work are in therapy for the people that are not going to the therapy. So a lot of these things you're not going to learn them eventually from these people, so we have to learn these things and we have to learn how to break these patterns. So I think that there's so much compassion, like you said, and understanding how we were programmed this way, and now having that empowerment to change the programming and how we respond to it. So
You
thank
got
you
to
for
think
breaking it down.
if when you were a child, the people who had the very, divine responsibility of caregiving for you, if they were consistently asking you to manage their emotional state,
Mm-hmm.
their physical state, their mental state, their spiritual state, you learned by example that that's just the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you said, if it was happening then, chances are it's still happening now. So really think about who in your life is really energetically drawing on you, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Who is a draw on you?
Mm-hmm.
And a really kind of good way or a way to understand this is like whose phone call when you see it pop up, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
or whose text message are you like, oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pattern, and chances are, if you're not aware of it, you're still feeling the feelings as if you are aware of it.
Yeah.
Because it's a draw, it's a drain. Those empathic relationships are the ones that if we're not if that doesn't resonate and there's not a depleted sort of like aversion to it, but there's the you turn into Mighty Mouse,
Mm-hmm.
dun, da, 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 I'm gonna come and save the day. I'm gonna figure this out for this person. Pause right there and ask. Do you truly believe that this person has what it takes to figure it out themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And if that answer is anything less than a whole body hell yes, then that is an empathic response. And I'm telling you, that comes laden with expectations, perfectionist paradigms, resentment, rules, regulations, oppression. And you may be the one doing those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's so much to be said around the early dynamics or the early programming about learning to be rescued, learning that that's how you receive love is by being rescued. And when you see that, and especially, and I've had this more around women than I've had around men, about this rescue syndrome that somebody's going to come and save me, that somebody's going to come and fix it for me. And we become this damsel in distress in these conversations around who's going to come and rescue, who's going to come and fix. And I see the way that, especially in my life and throughout friendships over the years where I've taken that role, I'll rescue, I'll save. And I know that that's my early childhood programming of thinking and even like catastrophizing emotions when I was younger, because I thought this is the only way that I can be received. This is the only way that I am heard, that I am seen, is if it's inflated, as if it's catastrophized. And now I've created a situation as a child where I need rescuing because it was the only way that I knew how to get it. And so breaking out of that, where, oh my gosh, I don't have to be rescued, I can actually take care of myself. And I just love so much the language that you use, because there was a pain point in my own healing journey of having to sit with the grief on how it felt not to be trusted by my caregivers, not to be trusted that I was capable and competent of going through big emotions. But in some environments, some people are uncomfortable around big emotions, so they don't want them to be demonstrated. And so you try to squash the big emotion, or you try to sweep something under the rug, and then it shows up in some wifty way later. But this idea of just around, the ways that we may have learned to receive love through this rescue paradigm is something that we get to rewrite this script around, so we're not depleted and exhausted all the time trying to be that for everybody else.
Agreed. I think another thing to think about too is in these moments, quiet with yourself, or if you're working with, a support system, really discovering, is there a desire within you, or are you seeking it from outside to overpower?
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes we can kind of mistakenly perceive being rescued when really we really want to be overpowered and controlled and told what to do, or we want to do that to somebody else. And that is that persecution, because that creates an amplified energetic that relationship will stay kind of in that resonance.
Mm-hmm.
When you are compassionate and you are also seeking compassionate witnessing, it's empowering with.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
no power differential. There's no guru. There's no know-it-all. There's no person who is the fixer. There's none of that. It's an equal playing field. However, if you've been used to being in that space of being rescued, overpowered, and empathically dealt with or dealing with others, remember, compassion's going to feel pretty boring,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're going to be like, whoa, where is my big emotional high and low? Where's that big, like hit that I'm looking for? And sometimes that hit will come from the chaos. People will get mad, people will balk, people will, blow up at you, or you'll do that, but that's still that like big hit to the system. Compassion doesn't come with those big hits to the system. Compassion is it's very consistent
Mm-hmm.
in its application. And especially once we get so effective at utilizing and embracing and embodying compassion, it becomes this natural set point of peace and of ease.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are lots of things to think about, when it comes to how you've been taught to navigate this world empathically, how you've been taught to empathically want to overpower others, almost as, like Sheena was saying, it is proof of your love and your lovability, right? We can get into that equation too, where we start to really believe after the equal sign is love, if we are fixing, overpowering, persecuting, rescuing, those are really nuanced things that we get to start to discover about ourselves. And again, as we are discovering them, there is no shame or blame that needs to be attributed to this process, because that's just going to put us right back in that empathic vortex. So
Mm-hmm.
if you find yourself through this discovery process thinking like, oh, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I've got to fix myself, that inner persecutor is really coming on strong. just do what you can to get the support that you need from a facilitator, a practitioner, someone who really has their legs under them and understanding this, so that you can start to quiet that inner persecutor voice and just really approach this with no judgment and no self-criticism.
I love that. And there is a high road to being an empath too. Once we meet our needs, I mean, we keep going back to these Maslow hierarchy of needs as, fight or flight that we can be in when we don't have our needs met. But once we do have our needs met, and once we do practice these things around being compassionate witness to the experience without being consumed by it, without entering the vortex, there's so much peace in that space. And when you were doing the alignment at the beginning, I just kept feeling like there is so much peace here. There's infinite possibility and potentiality for peace, for ease, once we check in. And sometimes if an emotion can take 30 seconds to pass through us, 90 seconds, but, to actually check in and how am I feeling? And how do I move based on what I'm feeling? How do I navigate? I'm feeling this way. Maybe that changes the capacity that I have. Maybe I don't go into a group situation today. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit more tender and a nature walk is more helpful for me. Like becoming like more informed about, okay, what does it mean when I feel this way? And how am I going to be compassionate and empathic to my own needs so that when we can start meeting our own needs, the empathy that we could be experiencing with one another gets to be that bliss, gets to be that peace, gets to be that joy. So I do love that there is a higher road to the empath connection once those needs are met, where we now feel that collective peace around us.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, highest expression of empathic resonance really are these crystalline DNA gifts that are coming on, the telepathy, the bilocation, all of those things. That's what they transform into. It's this path that we get to sort of traverse together to get to that point. And, something you said just sparked these two words in my consciousness: consuming or radiating.
Mm,
Right? That's kind of what you can determine when you're having these moments with yourself. Am I seeking to consume right now, or am I seeking to radiate?
mm,
Let's break those down just a bit more. You can have a vulnerable share, like Sheena was talking about, and still be radiating,
mhm,
right? You can present as if everything is fabulous and still be consuming.
mhm,
Energy does not lie. So, this is where you get to be really honest with yourself.
mhm,
What are you doing right now? Are you consuming? Are you radiating? Consumption energy is empathy with others. Radiation energy is compassion with others. Okay?
mhm,
So just let those things sort of be your road to understand yourself even deeper. And that's what this whole process is. It's self-understanding.
mhm,
It really is just you getting to know yourself in these deeper, more divine ways.
mhm.
If it's okay in our last couple of minutes, let's have some play and let's talk about like ways to identify if you are this empathic sponge or the empathic vortex in your adult to adult relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's play.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say like if you are used to being the person that calls or texts with your whole laundry list of what's going wrong, and it's not a conversation or, a give and take where you're constantly asking your friend how they're doing. This is not about bonding through trauma or commiseration. This is just about an equal playing field and kind of a very specific way of describing it. But if you're that person that like dump trucks on somebody for an hour conversation and you've never asked how they're doing, you're the empathic sponge.
Yeah. Yes. I love this one that came up and was very present for me in just bringing a new awareness into how I was living through my step work, getting sober. one of the steps in really visiting this in my awareness was, how much do people count on me? How can I be trusted? Can I be responsible? Or do people can think, oh, she's already got so much going on. I couldn't possibly ask her to check on my plants or to walk my dog or whatever. Like, are you a dependable, trusted friend that can be responsible? Or do people tend to bypass even thinking about, oh, she's got too much going on? You might be the empath vortex.
Yeah, you just might be. Yeah. And also, like, are you the one that's consistently asking your friends and family, maybe your partner, to be your therapist?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really not their job or their role.
Yeah.
If you really need that type of support, then compassionately relate to this empathic part of yourself and find a practitioner or a facilitator to do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you don't want to be the person that they see your number come up and they're like, "Ugh,
Exactly.
ew,
Exactly.
I've only got 5 minutes. I know this conversation will take an hour, and I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
be going, uh-huh, uh-huh, oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, if that's what you're receiving on the other end of your phone call,
Mm-hmm.
because you were just, sharing so much at such a rapid pace, just start to like understand this about yourself. And again, there's no shame, there's no blame.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
We've
We've
all been
all been
there.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not alone.
And I
Like,
like to even think just even reflecting on the last time we were together is, you know, are you a wild, whimsical, charismatic, enthusiastic storyteller when you're narrating your life, when you're sharing about your experience? Are they full of whimsy and charm and charisma? Or are they usually coming from the victim paradigm, like, oh my gosh, you won't believe this thing that happened to me? Or after you tell a story, or people are like, oh my gosh, how magical, like how wonderful that was your experience, because we all get to be here as the narrators of our story. So how are we telling the story to ourselves, and how are we sharing the story with others? If other people are animated and enthusiastic and excited by our storytelling, chances are we're exercising that higher vibration to be in the peace and the ease that is in the remembering, that's in the unity conscious, that's not separating itself from nature to make it a victim of its circumstances.
absolutely. That is such a great way to describe it too, because you and I were doing group work so often, you know, and just when you're socializing and out with people, you're right. If you're telling the story of your life, you don't have to mince words and hold back
Mm-hmm.
the authentic, expression of your experience. However, if you're saying it and at the end of the story, it's kind of like people look shell-shocked. But if at the end of your story, people are like, that was amazing, like, yes, I'm right there with you. Remember, energy doesn't lie. It's all about your energetic intentions going into it. It's a great way to start to understand with soft personal discernment how you are showing up. So my daughter's a volleyball player. And a great coach said to a bunch of girls at a clinic a couple of weeks ago, I want you to think how the rest of the team feels when you're on the court with them.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because so often, like in team sports, and let's just say, hey, life is a team sport,
Yeah.
right? And in these moments, like, is the rest of the team feeling like, feeling the pull, like they feel the pull so much that maybe they pull away and avoid you? Are they feeling like you're a really great member of the team that's going to show up and meet everybody, kind of on this equal playing field? That again doesn't mean you have to like hold back on what's authentically happening for you. But
Mhm.
as you share, what are your intentions about sharing it? Are you the empathic sponge looking for people to come around you and validate you and say, oh, no, 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 you didn't deserve that. Life is so unfair. You're so much better than that. Or are you the one that's saying, I'm taking this experience and it's so hard. And it's heartbreaking and it's painstaking, but I'm not going to let it get me down. And this is what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Are we authentically communicating what's going on? So just think about it. What's the other team feel or the rest of the team feel like when you get put on the court with them?
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. And it goes
Yeah.
back to the confidence too. How confident can we be in our own ability to show up and be rooting for the team, be in that team environment that it's for everybody. Every choice that I make affects humanity seven times seven times seven generations back and seven times seven times seven generations forward. And when we can show up as that member of a team, then we can trust in our ability to get through everything that we need to do. That everybody had their shower, did what they needed to do before they got on the court. I did the same thing. We all trust in our ability to do that, to show up, because we have one common goal. Let's make this life better than how we found it.
Absolutely. And that goes to that kind of like power of manifestation, law of manifestation, and magnification and amplification. We are the creators of our reality. So what are we going to birth forth? And if that sounds a little bit wild and, just way too expansive, then think a great question for you, if you're feeling like you're the empathic sponge, is, have I met my own needs today?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of back to where we started, and let that be your jumping off point to really determine what's going to be the next best step for you.
Yeah.
I met my own needs today. Am I capable of meeting my own needs? Do I believe that my needs are worthy of being met? Those are things to really start to dance with.
Mm-hmm. I love that last one. Do I feel worthy of having my needs met? Do I know that I deserve to have my needs met? And can I be supportive and flexible that meeting my needs today might look different than meeting my needs yesterday? It might look different than what they are tomorrow. And can I just also be flexible with what that looks like in my own ability to translate the energy around me of what needs to be done to resource myself from this moment?
And you know what? If you grew up in a household where your needs were consistently not met and you were taught you had to meet the needs of others all the time, your adult relationships could consistently reflect that. And you may have never known what it feels like to truly have your needs met.
Mm-hmm.
This whole conversation could make sense in one realm, but in a deeper way of processing and integrating it, it could feel like a different language altogether. And that's okay. That's a starting off point. And that's where you get to know, okay, I get to self-resource and have someone support me as I kind of untangle all of this and try to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
But it very well may be that your needs have never truly been met. And that's a space where you just get to compassionately witness yourself
Mm-hmm.
and have that be a starting point.
And I think that's the greatest work that you can ever do is acknowledging that and choosing, what do I do now? How do I meet them now? How do I start asking myself that question every single day? How can I meet my own needs? And how can I show up for myself so that I can learn eventually, but all this gets to be a practice and it gets to be done one day at a time. But I think that's such an important point that you bring up, Jamie, because I think some of us don't even go there because we don't think that it could be possible. It can be very possible. And it can just take that moment of acknowledgement and that self-witnessing to, where have other people met my needs or where have they not? And now what can I do differently about that so that I don't have to feel like I need to receive love through rescuing?
Yeah, agreed, agreed. And again, I have something percolating in the soup of my consciousness. Now I need to get it into my mouth so that I can speak it. Um, to survive, you might have had to push down your own intuitive knowing so far that to just like make it through the moment of empathically holding so many other people's weight, it could have completely shifted or skewed your ability to really see things as they are. And so I'm saying this tenderly. We're not looking to put the shame or blame, finger pointing on anybody else. This is just about awareness and like okay, that's interesting.
Mhm.
But you might have had to really glorify these relationships of your childhood. So as an adult looking back, you might have had to really glorify them for your adult sensibilities to stay in this empathic, enmeshed way of relating to them. And what I mean by that is if, you're hearing us talk and you're thinking, "Oh, my childhood was wonderful. I have nothing to complain about." Just going back and back. Perhaps it was. And I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything.
Mhm.
But if you're also really glorifying your adult relationships, like I had a friend that would share with me these like very hurtful things in a consistent way about how she was feeling in her marriage and how she felt like her husband related to her. And so it was almost like one side. And then when we were doing group work, she would express him as her beloved. Like we all knew that when she was saying my beloved and I, she was meaning him. And in our group work, kind of just built him up into this glorious sort of pedestalized version of himself. And I'm not trying to say I knew what my friend was doing then, but I'm using this as an excuse to say, I'm not trying to like analyze her. I'm using this as a way, not an excuse, as a way to say, if you're finding like some things that just aren't adding up in the way that you sort of story tell about these relationships versus the way that you really express yourself when you're in a space that feels very safe, that may be a place to sort of look at, am I glorifying this to survive it in the moment?
Mhm.
Are there some things that I need to like really face and look at? Because it's keeping you in this empathic place where you are their empathic support system. And then you probably are the empathic sponge asking others to come into your empathy vortex to be that for you.
Mhm.
Just another way to sort of look at it.
I love that. And I think that's so relatable. And that's such a great example of so many of us out of survival. We've romanticized the past and we romanticize these relationships because they kept us alive or it was a survival tool. And these conversations are just about being able to take us out of that survival mindset, so just to add a little bit more contemplation, just to add a little bit more curiosity. If somebody's taking up so much stock in our brain, just a couple relationships, so like like something to think about, and it can be really challenging when these are family members or these are people that we've known for a really long time. And that's why we have to be tender and we have to be gentle and we have to take it one step at a time, because somebody that might be in that perfect relationship in the moment and they're starting to look at their childhood dynamics. Now maybe they heal from their childhood dynamics in that relationship, but now that they've gone through that healing, maybe that partner is no longer the right partner when you step away. I remember doing my step work also and being like, just recognizing how many narcissistic relationships I had placed around me. And it was very, very, very disorienting to see how many of them there were, because it was a survival tool. It was a coping mechanism. It was a way that I had learned how to be in relationship with people by being the empathic sponge for other people's crises and playing that role for a long time. So when I came out of that role, I lost a lot of friendships that had relied on me for that, and that was very humbling to see how many people I had placed around me to give myself validation that I existed, so to break, oh, it wasn't just one, wasn't just two, wasn't just three, oh goodness, but that took a lot of steps to see, to identify, to see how do I come into right relationship with this dynamic now, because not all those relationships have to go by the wayside, but they do get to evolve.
Absolutely. And that goes back to what we've talked about in the other two videos. When these relationships start to sense that we are shifting and transforming, they may fight back. They
Mhm.
may tantrum, say, no, I want to reestablish the status quo. And they may have to end before they can begin again anew. Um, So we talked about in, I think, the first video that we shared that, really this empathic way of being in relationship is a very codependent way of being in relationships. So there can be a lot of grief that comes around as these codependent relationships come to an end.
Mhm.
So I know there are some great codependents, anonymous groups online. There are lots that meet in person. That may be a great step to sort of give yourself a support structure as you're going to be stepping into this space, which will have a mixed bag of emotions with it. There will be probably, a sense of fear and trepidation about changing. There's going to be probably grief around the awareness, as well as grief around the release of these relationships and a whole bunch of other things. So, remember, you are definitely worthy of setting yourself up for success.
Mhm.
You're definitely worthy of really curating these internal tools of what Sheena said so brilliantly at the beginning, self-regulation. And we'll add self-soothing and self-resourcing, all things that had we grown up in an optimal environment where we were able to develop neurologically, to the fullest potential for our social, emotional, mental, and behavioral well-being, um, it would have been just a little bit different. But, right now we get to just have awareness and say, okay, I get it. I get it. And this is how I'm going to self-soothe.
Mhm.
As an adult, I'm going to learn it. This is how I'm going to self-regulate. As an adult, I'm going to learn it. This is how I'm going to self-resource. As an adult, I'm going to learn it,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth.
And how beautiful that you get to be your own hero, your own heroine of the story. You get to come in and save the day, and you get to have these tools on you all the time, every day, never without them, never having to be in that embodiment of the child that didn't have those tools anymore, because now you've grown up to be you.
You get to be your own perfect parent, right? Your
Yeah.
own best friend, your own big sister, big brother, your own perfect partner.
I
Yeah.
love it. And I think maybe in the next conversation, we can start to chat about some of the gifts of being an empath too. Once we get through the muddy waters of learning these tools for self-regulating and practicing them with one another, then we can, like you talked about, we can start experiencing some of our extrasensory perception and these gifts, these heightened abilities that we have that can now inform us of the beauty that's here, of the wonder and the awe that's here without having to scan the environment in hypervigilance for the fear.
Yeah, that's a great place to go. That extrasensory empathy that's aligned with our internal and external environments, and how that is a perfect alchemical partner for compassion.
Mm, mm,
I
yeah,
love that.
I love it too. Um, so I know you've got a little course, a curriculum that you're working on. Do you mind sharing a little bit more of it?
Absolutely. So, Sheena and I are actually going to do a whole question and answer around this because it is one of those triumphant stories about how this all came to be. But I've been working with the cosmic fire of dragon magic, specifically activating within my DNA these infinite matrices of expansion. And so I had one of the main dragons that I work with about 8 or 9 weeks ago come to me and ask if I would do a 13 sanctuary temple space, activating the unique expressions of embodiment of 13 different dragon energetics. So we're going to be doing these via Zoom so people can participate in their now moment from their now moment environment. And I'm really praying for leadership through partnership. So as people are aligned with this temple space, and please send me an email if you want to be part of it. As people are aligned with this temple space, there's going to be an initial conversation saying, okay, which dragon embodiment that connects to a chakra, a crystalline consciousness, and more, which one resonates the most with you? Because then, as a subsequent offering later in the week, we will have a very interactive, experiential conversation around how this particular dragon magic really works with you and for you as a way of just way showing for the entire group just how you are dancing with this. So I'm really excited about it. We're going to start late August, and I don't have the exact schedule yet, but the financial exchange is $111. And when that comes to me, I'm going to be keeping it all in a savings account. And week by week, we will amplify all of that money. And on the 13th week, we will decide where we are going to donate it to. And
Mm.
this is my way of fully living in the energetic of gratitude for some abundance that came to my family about a month ago. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Oh, I love it so much. And it feels like such a great evolution from our conversation around empathy and now accessing these gifts and these higher states and these guides that are here to support us in this great awakening right now. I too have a 7 week journey virtually that I'll be starting next Tuesday. So if anybody is interested in joining us, then please join. I'm really excited about this. This is again, this is called the listening path. So again, it's about really deeply listening with our environment and being able to connect with our guides, being able to connect with each other. This is also about listening to each other and how do we listen to completion when someone shares a story with us instead of listening to reply. How do we start being more mindful of how we're narrating our story with each other. So this is going to be meeting for an hour a week for 7 weeks. We'll be going through Julia Cameron's book, but we'll also be really digging deep into these chapters to practice these things, practice deeply listening to our environment, practice putting our phone on do not disturb or putting it away and practicing time away from devices and just being able to go for a walk without headphones in and just literally listening to nature, but really just kind of coming back to this place of simplicity and then bringing in the accountability piece to be listening with one another and sharing the aha moments that come up from our artist dates or our walks in nature. So this is a $55 investment. You can also sign up to do some add-ons for some one-on-one work. But this, we are hoping that creates a lot of accountability on just practicing the art of communing with the unseen forces around us. We're
Which
really
is what we're talking about.
exactly.
It is
Exactly.
so compassionate, and it is that higher vibrational expression of aligned empathy. I love it.
Yeah. So
Mm.
yay. So we start on Tuesday. We'll have all that details, especially your email address to get in touch with you for the Dragon Space. So I look forward to having another chat around this and bringing in some more of these gifts. But before we close out, is there anything else you'd like to share? Anything coming up in your soup?
No, my soup is really grateful. It's gratitude soup.
I join you in the gratitude soup. Thank you, as always, for making the time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this enlightening conversation that I think gives us a lot of moment of pause, just to check in, even if it's just a moment of the benchmark of seeing where you've been and where you're at now and just compassionately witnessing that and celebrating that because these are big life lessons and a lot of us learn them early through our family of origin but have gotten to practice them and practice rewriting and evolving them through our adult friendships. So I'm so grateful for you for being such a way shower of practically applying these things and being able to share them in a way that gives us something to think about and something to keep growing around. We don't have to be rescued. We don't have to fall into the trap that we have to come around the cooler and talk about our woes. We can actually come around and talk about our bliss and talk about our joy and emanate and radiate more of that. So thank you.
Oh, honey, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone who joins us in this space in your now moment. Hey, here's a little thing to try. See how it feels to start to have moments of sharing your wins, what's going right.
Yeah.
And just prepare yourself that people may not know how to react or respond to that. And that's okay. You don't need their validation. It's just a dipping our toe in that water of just really starting to create the pathways for ourselves through repetition, that it is okay, we are safe to shine as bigly, and I'm making that word up, as brightly as possible, as brightly as we can.
Yes, yes, yes. Brag, brag, brag. Let's bring back the brags.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, honey, I love you.
I love you too. Namaste.
And goodbye, baby. Namaste.
Bye.